Good evening. Um, I'd like to start this first video with talking to you about story and what does story mean. We talk about storytellers being the ultimate desirable thing for attractiveness. If you don't have a story in your life, to your life, why should anybody be interested in you? So that means good and bad characters and actually experiences and actually things that you've done yourself, or not necessarily done bad things, but experienced bad things and done good to get through it. That would be someone like Joseph. But the rest of, and Jesus, of course, but the rest of the Bible is full of people who actually tried very hard to do good things, and did lots of good things, but they failed and did bad things as well. So that's Jacob, and he is somebody who is quite a bad character, but is extremely determined to be a good character, but he just doesn't have it in him. And the interesting thing is God prefers Jacob by if it was a whole meter, just by a millimeter, by 1,000th. So they're sort of just very closely, the margin is very tiny between his brother Esau and Jacob, because Esau is actually a much nicer person, but he's not determined at all because he's so strong he doesn't need to be. And Jacob is just a normal strength sort of guy, and he's not able to cope with the big wide world as much. But he must become very selfish and tells lies. He learns to tell lies in the previous chapters. If you look at my previous channel, you'll see that. And so the next thing now is where, after 20 years of being lied to, and then being in a horrible situation, he's then afraid of his big strong brother, but wrongly so, because his big strong brother has always been a chilled out sort of guy. But yeah, the relationship is confused. So it'd be good to ask yourself this question about yourself, as I do about myself. But the more important thing is to actually try and be a better person, because that's really what God asks of us. Here we go. Jacob raised his eyes and saw Esau coming towards him with 400 men. So he divided the children between Leah and Rachel and the 2 slave girls. That's the 4 people he was married to, but not properly married. He put the slave girls with their children in front, Leah with her children next, and Rachel with Joseph last. He then went on ahead of them, bowing low to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. Esau ran to meet him and embraced him. I just mentioned that Joseph is going to be our hero later on in this channel. There we go. And he's the eldest son of his only chosen wife, which is Rachel. Yeah. So bowing low to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother, Esau ran to meet and embraced him. He threw his arms round him, and don't forget, this is more emotional culture, the Middle Eastern culture, more similar to say France, or Italy. embraced him. He threw his arms around him and kissed him, and they wept. So it's just a social behavior, not like it's different to the West. They're both crying because they hadn't seen each other in a long time. When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Jacob replied, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." But he's not telling the truth, because even though they're so emotional, he's still not telling the truth. Jacob isn't, because Jacob wouldn't be his brother's servant. The slave girls, I'm still reading now, verse 6. The slave girls came near, each with her children, and they bowed low. Then Leah with her children came near and bowed low, and afterwards Joseph and Rachel came near and bowed low also. Esau said, "What was all that company of yours that I met?" I think, in the previous chapter, he had sent lots of gifts to his brother to try and stop his brother being angry with him, as a bribe, I suppose. And so it just shows that really he's living in fear, and he's wrongly afraid of his brother, who's not going to harm him. So he bowed low, and he answered, so Jacob answered, and he answered, "It was meant to win favor with you, my lord Esau." So he's honest that it was, that he was trying to bribe his brother not to hurt him. So that is good, isn't it? Esau answered, "I have more than enough. Keep what is yours, my brother." But Jacob said, "On no account. If I have won your favor, then I pray, accept this gift from me. For you see, I come into your presence as into that of with no capital letter, a god, which means demigod, a worldly god. I come into your presence as into that of a god, and you receive me favorably. Accept this gift which I bring you. For God," that is with a capital letter, so the real God of all, of the whole universe. "For God has been gracious to me, and I have all I want." So he urged him, and he accepted it. So that's an important moment where Esau is still easygoing and Jacob is still determined, and that is the winning factor for Jacob. But Jacob is and all his family are completely petrified. They're really afraid of Esau. I'm not. It feels like Jacob is a nicer person, but actually Esau is the nicer person. But we might believe that because our culture tells us that being easygoing is better than being determined. But God is definitely preferring a determined person rather than an easygoing person. Even though God prefers the nicer person than the selfish liar, that's what makes them so almost equal in their morality, in how good or bad they are. They're almost equal. But God prefers someone who is really determined than someone who is very strong. So even though Esau is a nicer person and Jacob is a liar, because Esau is perhaps lazy and Jacob is perhaps extremely hardworking. They're both good and bad, but Jacob wins the morality competition with God. So we'll read the story onwards and look forward to when Joseph, the good character, comes along in later chapters after